presented by recording in progress by Michael Arndt from RDH Building Science. Michael is a project technologist and consultant at RDH, and also a craftsman of found material art.
Artist. Yeah.
An artist, found material artist, who has been displaying art and installing it at some public.
I just did a piece up at Columbia or Cedar Crossing.
Cedar Crossing at it's a light rail station.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Michael, please come on up and take it away.
Slideshow, share screen. Nope. Share screen. Nope. Closer. Yeah. We had this all set up, but we changed computers. I'm sorry. That's right. Nope. Sir. All right. Yeah, I think so. Yep. There is some of these additional screens here. All right. Everybody can hear me all right? Somebody. Is that better? No. Hello? No. Yeah. Okay. Better. All right. Thanks everybody for coming out today. I'm going to be covering quite a bit of material in a very short time, and I'm going to be repeating some things that are very important for us to kind of consider as we move forward with our work. First off, I want to thank you, D7. Thank you, D7, for being the sponsor today. And thanks, CBEC, for inviting me to do this presentation. We have our normal disclaimer. People who want AI credits, please talk to somebody on the board and they can get you hooked up with that. Okay, so a lot of material that I'm going to try to cram into our time today. And I may speed up a little bit. If I get talking too fast, let me know. Clean Buildings Performance Standard is a new law that was just passed here in Washington State over the last 2 years. It is going to be affecting all buildings 20,000 gross square feet or larger here in Washington State. They've broken it into two different tiers, tier 1 and tier 2. I'm going to discuss how this is going to be affecting multifamily and commercial buildings. We're going to be talking about what the city of Seattle is going to be doing that's going to be in conjunction with this. I'm going to talk about the 3 pathways that the state has developed for building owners to follow. I want to dive deeper into how this is going to affect building owners and how it's going to affect us as industry people. There is an early adopter incentive program that's part of this to help building owners to get through some of the energy improvements that they need to do. And again, more focused topic about how this is really going to impact us in our industry. I'll have some slides for useful resources and also have a postcard up here. And I'll talk about those when we get to that point. And I'll open up for more getting into the weeds discussion as we move in. Oh. It's not that this good. Nathan, I need your help. It's not working with the arrow keys. Okay. Okay. Oh. Okay, so how did we get here? Several years ago, the federal government said, we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 50% over the whole US. And part of that was based on what our levels were for greenhouse gas levels in 2005. We need to do that drastic reduction by 2030. So that's going to be a pretty impact on a lot of folks throughout the states. Here in Washington State, back in 2018, Governor Inslee created created a plan called the Climate Justice Plan. The Climate Justice Plan, a lot of the initiatives and stuff that were part of that were developed in the House and the Senate into laws. One of these laws is the WAC 19450, which is the Clean Buildings Performance Standard. This one is more focused on existing buildings because existing buildings is the most largest stock that's contributing to greenhouse pollution. From there, the whole goal behind the Clean Buildings Performance Standard is to keep our energy costs low for the residents and for the building owners. but also to reduce the gas emissions. How are we going to do that? So they developed this Clean Buildings Performance Standard. The Clean Buildings Performance Standard is being handled by the Department of Commerce. They're the ones that are heading up this whole new law. And they're the ones that are developing the guidelines, doing classes, and creating forms and stuff for us to follow. All this law is based off from ASHRAE 100, 2018. ASHRAE 100 is basically a huge list of different energy efficient measures that building owners can incentive program for the buildings that are so far off they need to do drastic improvements within their building. Okay, so the Clean Buildings Performance Standard. I'm going to be talking about EUI a lot here. EUI is energy use intensity per square foot per year. So you have a building, how many square feet is that building? How much energy is that building consuming? And then that's all done in the math, and we come up with your energy use intensity for that building. You're going to have to develop out what your EUI target is for that building. So the Department of Commerce created each inside a building. So you may have offices on one side, you may have a warehouse on the other side, you may have a boutique on the storefront down front. 3 different types of uses. Each of those uses will have its own separate EUI target. So again, there's a bunch of math to kind of calculate all that out and come up with the building as a whole, what that target is for that building. Along with this, building owners are going to have to come up with an operation and maintenance program. This is basically a reserve study on steroids. You're listing out every single energy using equipment that's within the building, including all the components of the building envelope. Along with that, we have to develop an energy plan. So the whole goal here is taking our buildings that were our existing building stock and getting them down to net zero by 2045. In order to do all this stuff, we need to hire an auditor to help out these building owners to figure out what things that can be done effectively and cost, within cost relative. So they're getting a good payback in the short run. Through consultants and auditors, the building owner is going to be relying on us to help them meet the compliance. So there's a lot of deadlines that are set up throughout the process. And in order to meet the compliance, you have to hit each of these deadlines on or before the deadline for each of these different areas. Once you prove that your building met your energy target, you have to do 12 months of recording through benchmarking, showing that you did make your target, and then that brings you to compliance. Okay, tier 1, tier 2. Tier 1 buildings. It was the first law that came out back in 2019. All buildings 50,000 gross square feet or larger are required to participate in this. Along with that, every building that's in that category of 50,000 or larger has to have at least one energy source providing to that building, whether it's gas, oil, steam, electricity. Then they have to figure out what their EUI target is for their building. based on what the Department of Commerce comes out, figuring that out through the map, et cetera, and to figuring out what their target is as a whole for their building. Lastly, like I said, once we met our target, proved that we did what we said we were going to do, then we meet compliance and we finish off our paperwork. There is a lot of paperwork, and I'll keep repeating that. There is a lot of paperwork. Tier 2, this is the law that just passed this past summer. It's saying all buildings 20,000 gross square feet or larger are now required. And this also includes all multifamily buildings. So if you have a multifamily building and it has less than 5 units, you're exempt. So good thing to know. The first phase of this law, it says all buildings 20,000 gross square feet and larger must benchmark. It's not an if, it's not an and, it's a must. So they must start benchmarking now, start developing their operation and maintenance program, and also start developing their energy plan. And we'll get into those a little more. Okay, so we have some deadlines that are coming up real quick here. 220,000 gross square feet or larger. So these are going to be warehouses, high rises, buildings of that sort. Their compliance deadline is 2026. Before 2026, they have to have 1 year of recording prior to that, showing that they met their target. Prior to that, they have 18 months to develop their plan and implement it. Prior to that, they have to do their auditing. Prior to that, they have to do their benchmarking. So there's a lot of stuff that has to happen here. And it's 4 years. We're just talking a couple months from now. So here's a good example. So I got a 220, 230 gross square feet building. Up there at the top, I have to set up my portal account, get all my data transferred over from Energy Star to it, and start benchmarking my building. That should have been done by now. So if these buildings haven't even started that, they're behind the 8 ball already. Right now, they should be at their auditing, finishing up their audit and looking at what optimized bundles they're going to use to make their building better. So, you know, a lot of these buildings, they got their notices like, oh, it's just another thing from the state. They're going to have a rude awakening here shortly. So now you have to develop your operation and maintenance program. You got to develop your planning and budgeting. And that's that 18 months that I was talking about. So by 2025, you have to have all that paperwork figured out, implement those measures within your building, and then start recording it. They like to see you starting recording 18 months prior to the deadline. That gives you some leeway in case you see the first couple of months, the target's not hitting, you can make some more changes. Right now, there's been a large group of early adopter incentive programs, people that have started taking advantage of that, and we'll get into that. Okay, City of Seattle. City of Seattle is taking the performance standard and they're going a different route at it. They're saying greenhouse gas emissions. So if I have a building in the City of Seattle, I'm going to have to do the energy recording. And the City of Seattle, I also have to do my greenhouse gas emissions. So these people in the City of Seattle have 2 things they need to do now. Along with that, they're pretty much following the same pattern of everything with that state's saying. Their deadlines are pretty much the same. The goals is basically 2041 to be net zero. So the City of Seattle, they've been benchmarking their buildings for several years now. And most people who have buildings or work with people that have buildings know that they've been inputting this information into their Energy Star account that gets transferred over to the city portal. and then it gets uploaded to their benchmarking map. They have this wonderful website, kind of give you a good glimpse of where your buildings are at. So as you can see in the map over here, you got all these dots. Each of those dots there's approximately 2 million dots there in the city of Seattle. 2 million buildings that have been benchmarking so far. Those buildings, as you see, there's not many green ones on that list. Okay. So you can type in an address, you can type in the name of the building, you type in the address, and it'll take you to a specific building. And then on that page, you can dive deeper about how that building is actually doing. It's both. For the city of Seattle that they've been doing, it's been more high-rise focused. But there is some mid-rise buildings that are in the mix, and it's kind of a voluntary thing. So you may not find some buildings that you're looking at. So I clicked on a small mid-size office, 50,000 gross square feet up to 60,000. And here in the gray, you see kind of faded in the back. That's all the buildings that are in the stock here in the city of Seattle. And you see kind of right in this range, it's where most of the bulk is. So a lot of buildings are pretty close to meeting their target or being, within that range so that they don't have much. But you got this one building way over here. He's like horrible. So, that building's going to need a lot of work to get them all the way over to the right, to the left. Also on this website, you can see, here's my building that I'm working on, and I need to get it all the way over here to the lowest. I got quite a bit to just even get myself close to what the average is. So there's a lot of work out there. And on this page, you can dive deeper, you can scroll up and down and get different information that's available. It's all public. So the city of Seattle, like I mentioned, they're pretty much following the state on their guidelines. 2,200 gross square feet buildings, 2026, et cetera, et cetera. So the deadlines are pretty much all the same. The thing that is the city of Seattle's dropped it down to 20,000 gross square feet for commercial buildings. And they already created a deadline where the state has not created a deadline for those smaller buildings. Multifamily. So I mentioned earlier that the state has not set up a deadline for these folks. The city of Seattle has. Here's our deadline. They're looking at 2031 for the first buildings to start meeting compliance. There's going to be some additional funding, some exemptions, low income buildings, affordable housing, some of those types of housing, and some equity. So buildings that are like community centers that are run by friends of the neighborhood or something like that. They're going to have funding, or there might be some exemptions there. Okay, we'll get into the pathways now. So we have 3 pathways. The Department of Commerce came up with kind of a little graph to kind of walk you through it. Here I am, I'm Mr. Building Owner, and the first thing I have to do is determine, am I exempt or not? Do I need to follow this law? And there's a very long list, but it's very specialized. Most of the buildings that we're going to be working on are going to be the other 2. Some of these would be like federal buildings, buildings on Native American land, and things like that. All buildings need to do benchmarking. Have to. There's no way of getting around it. All buildings need to develop and implement an operation and maintenance program. Also, they need to develop their energy plan. That's required. So I hired a consultant, an energy manager to come in, figure out where my EUI is and where I currently am by benchmarking my building. I do all the math, and it says, hey, I did great. All the stuff that I've been doing, keeping my building up to speed, changing out the boilers, et cetera, with more efficient equipment over the years paid off. I met my target this time. I don't have to do any extra work. There's going to be a few of those. I would say probably 30%. Most of the people are going to fall into this new category, the investment criteria. Investment criteria is you didn't meet your target, whether it's 2 points or 50 points or whatever, you have to meet your target or be lower than your target. So if I'm not meeting my target, I'm like, say I'm a multifamily building owner. My target's supposed to be like 33. I'm running up 49. I got a lot of work that I have to do within my building to make that target. So kind of ignore this as a whole. I'm going to take this as an example. Say, here I am. Here's my multifamily building. I'm up here. I'm at 79. Right now, my first target is right here. This is what the state's telling me what my EY target is. Every 5 years, we're going to get harder and harder restrictions until we get down to pass to have. The whole goal here is to be net zero by 2045 for our building stock. And that's a pretty big jump. You know, we're talking 20 years. How's this going to affect building owners? How's that going to affect them with all these responsibilities, all this paperwork that needs to be done? You know, the managers of these buildings are probably already maxed out. The facility staff, they're busy fixing things, so they're not going to have a lot of time. They're going to rely on board members. They're going to rely on consultants and to help them out with all this. Because of that, that's going to affect their budgets. You know, it's not cheap hiring us as consultants. You know, that's a big budget crunch number that's going to kill them. Reserve studies, it's going to affect how they're doing their reserve studies moving forward. Capital expenditure plans. You know, those slumlords down south have been neglecting their buildings and not doing much to improve them. Their capital expenditure plan is going to come right to their face real quick here. So the state came up with 5 roles. The first 3, there's no qualifications. Anybody can do this. The building owner can do it. They can have somebody on their staff do it. They can hire somebody else to come in and help them with it. Building manager is basically a very small responsibility. It's basically helping out the energy manager. The facilities person, they're going to be helping the auditor to figure out what are all the different components within their building. And this slides up on the Department of Commerce website. The energy manager, they're basically the ones kind of herding all the cats. We need you to help to do this. We need you to help us to do this. We need to fill out this paperwork and get that submitted. These last 2 roles out of the 5 roles, they require special certification. So an energy auditor and a qualified person have to have one of these accreditations in order to fall into that role. If they don't have that, they can't do the work. So they have very specific responsibilities for each of these roles. It can be the same person that's doing these. It could be the building owner if they happen to have this credential. So there's going to be a lot of demand for consultants and auditors here in the very near future. Okay, so I'll move into the rules and bylaws. So now you have this multi-use building. I have a boutique over on the side. I have Top Pot over here burning donuts with the gas. And I have Joe Schmo that's up on the top floor running his apartment at 90 degrees with the windows wide open. How is the building owner going to manage that? Are they going to start doing sub-metering? How's the fines? If I don't meet my target, I'm going to get fined. How's that fine going to get passed on? Am I having to renew my contracts with all these tenants that are within my building saying, hey, if we get fined, you're going to get fined? Or are we doing a special assessment because Joe Schmo had his windows open? It's a lot of thinking that these building owners are going to go through and how they're going to manage that. Fines and penalties. What if I just ignore this? I don't care. It's just going to give me a little slap on the wrist. Actually, it's $1 per gross square foot up to 18 months. So I have a 220,000 gross square foot building. It's $220,000 each day for 18 months. It's good incentive. There's going to be some oddities within our buildings. We've been in the field long enough. We come across just the weirdest things sometimes. So knowing what those things are ahead of the time, before their deadline comes, we can go to the Department of Commerce and say, hey, I have this weird situation. I have a data center right in the middle of my building. There's no EUI for it. What do I do? There's going to be things like that that we're going to run across. So starting sooner versus waiting until later is going to help your building owners out. Okay, so moving on to the next part. How are we going to do this? How are we going to help our building owners? So there's two different groups out there. There's our industry. We're going to fix everything via the building envelope. Put better insulation on the outside, put better insulation on the roof, better solar heat gain on the windows and such. We're going to do our best to try to capture the energy so it's not being released out. Then you have the other group. It's like, no, ignore that. The MEPs say, we're going to fix the HVAC, we're going to put better lighting in, we're going to fix more components within the building. The state's saying they're both wrong. It's both. The energy auditor is going to go in, work with the facility staff to figure out what needs to be done within the building and put those into categories. I'm going to have this bundle 1, bundle 2, bundle 3, bundle 4. Those bundles, they have to prove that if they do make those changes, that'll get them to their EUI target or better. So starting with the audit, you got your building benchmark. Now we have to do our audit. Auditor comes up with these optimized bundles. We have to do a life cycle cost analysis. And they don't use any life cycle. They have a very specific one that they have to use. Once we figure out which bundles, we have 8 bundles here, we present to the homeowner, and the homeowner says, I'm going to choose number 3. We're going to move forward with number 3. So we start moving forward, we implement those changes within the building, or we do a phased implementation. So a phased approach is basically saying, I got a brand new boiler I just put in 3 years ago. I don't want to change it out with a heat pump right now. It's a waste of energy, waste of money. So you can say on that energy plan that I was talking about, we're up here and we need to get down here by 2045. Where does that boiler come to in its normal end of life? We're going to mark that on that list. And then we're going to do what we can of the other energy measures in between now and then to keep us in compliance. The state's going to know, because you're submitting this plan to them, this is what our plan is, and we're going to stay with it. So the energy auditor has to come up with these optimized bundles. Like I said, it's a collection of different energy efficiency measures that can be done within the building. And I'll talk about some of those in the next slide. We have to do a cost cycle analysis to figure out, is it worthwhile to do these? Some of them, it's going to be super expensive. It's going to be more cost prohibitive. We talked about phase implementation. This is, again, how can we get them to net zero by 2045? It's not meeting this 5-year mark when my deadline is. It's every 5 years between now and 2045. How are we going to get there? So here's some examples. I'm a building owner, and I got presented by these optimized bundles by my auditor and my consultant. They say, we recommend number 3. I say, no, I want to go with number 4. So that bundle is going to be a slew of different things that'll get me to my target or better. That'd be changing out the chiller to a VRF, putting in some new windows, doing some light sensors, things like that. That's my bundle, and that will get me to my target that I need to be at. Okay, dive into this a little more. The early adopter incentive program was put on back in July of 21. As Ken mentioned, some people have taken advantage of this. There's still a lot of money. There's $75 million that was set aside for tier 1 buildings, $150 million for the smaller buildings. So there's a huge pocket of money there for these building owners to take advantage of. But these building owners have to be 15 EUI or higher in order to qualify. So these are going to be the really bad buildings that are out there that are going to be able to qualify for this. The smaller buildings, they get 30 cents gross square foot, where the larger buildings get 85. The reason for that is the bigger buildings are the biggest polluters. So the more that we can get them to make their building better, the better it is for the state to get to their for their goal. 30 cents gross square foot, but we have a larger bucket. We have a lot more smaller buildings than we do bigger buildings. There's an incentive guidebook. There's videos that walk you through this whole process, but basically you have to do the whole thing. You have to start before your deadline comes. So I have a multifamily building, a condo. I need to benchmark. I need to do my operation and maintenance program. I develop my plan. I start implementing those measures all now, not waiting, but now. Once I prove that I met my target, then I qualified for this incentive program. This money is not coming straight to the homeowner or the building owner. This money is going to the energy supplier. So if you got gas, it goes to the gas company. If it's electricity, it goes to the electric company. Those companies get to choose how that's going to get passed down to you. So a lot of these building owners, it's like, oh, great, we can start putting that into our reserve studies that we're going to get this cash back. Actually, you might not get cash. It may come back as a credit towards your bills. It may come as a Home Depot card. You know, it's all up to the individual companies to make the choice how that's going to get passed down. Okay, how is this going to impact us? Our friends up north, I don't know if you guys know about the deep energy retrofit law that just went into effect up in Canada. So they came up with this list, how this is going to impact them up there. They got 10 million buildings. Over 50% of those buildings need to do a deep energy retrofit. So if you divide that out, 1,400 buildings per day need to do an energy retrofit within the next 10 years in Canada. Canada, there's 17,000 architects and engineers to help them out. How's that going to come out for them? That means every single year, every single architectural firm in the country for the 10 years will have to do 30 zero emission building retrofits per year. That's a lot. Just think, all by yourself, I have to do 30 retrofits if I'm in Canada to keep up with the workload. So there's going to be a huge demand on our services as architects, engineers, consultants, auditors, et cetera, that are going to be influenced by this impact. So the state's been doing some proactive work. Part of the law from Jay Inslee's plan back in 2018 was to upgrade our energy grid, develop classes for certifications for more people to encourage students to get into those classes. There's been a lot of different things that have been happening in the background to help get people into those roles. Also, along with that, working with building component manufacturers, et cetera, to come up with more energy efficient equipment, components that the building owners can use within their buildings. So there's more restrictions that have been coming out gradually month by month over the last 3 years. So it's a pretty big impact. So I went through a lot of stuff real fast, and I'm sorry. Just wanted to make sure we got it all in before the time ended up. So we talked about the Clean Buildings Performance Standard, Tier 1 and Tier 2, 50,000 gross square feet for Tier 1 and larger, 20,000 to 50,000, and multifamily for Tier 2. We talked about how this is going to affect multifamily commercial buildings. The different ways that the tenants use that space within their buildings. We talked about the city of Seattle. So the city of Seattle, like I said, they have greenhouse gas emissions that you need to meet compliance for. And that's at the same time that you have to do your energy level as well. So they got a double header that they have to kind of pull off here. There's 3 pathways: exempt, meeting your target, or doing some investments. We talked about how this is going to affect the building owners and how we're going to accomplish that. So we have to do the benchmarking. We've got to develop plans. We've got to develop our operation and maintenance programs. We need to implement all that, benchmark it again to see if we met our target, submit a lot of paperwork, and then meet compliance. If you want to do the early adopter incentive program and be ahead of the game, start now. Start into that, keep going on it, take advantage of it before that funding runs out. We don't know if more federal funding is coming. This is going to impact us. It's going to impact our workloads. It's going to impact supply chain. We're struggling with heat pumps already. The heat pump demand is going to get worse as we move into this. So supply chain issues worse than what we are already experiencing if things keep going the way they have been. Okay, thank you for listening to me, and I'm ready to take your questions, talk about this. I know that my slide didn't show up for, I'm missing one slide. There we go, useful links. So the Department of Commerce has a wonderful website. They've been updating weekly, if not monthly. They have webinars and stuff to help you dive into this. WSU has programs that you can watch on YouTube as well. There's a lot of stuff out there to help you through this. You can share this website with your clients. This is where they're going to be going to in order to log in and create a portal account. So I created this little card here. Basically walks you through the 5 steps or 6 steps. Setting up your Energy Star account, uploading your energy provider data back as far as you possibly can. Setting up your SAW account with the Department of Revenue. Once you have your SAW account, then you can move into the portal site for the Department of Commerce. From there, we go into the 5 roles. Who's going to do what? Who's going to be in the team? Is it going to be one of the MEP people that are going to be involved? Is it going to be a consultant? Is it going to be an auditor? Is it going to be one person doing all 3 roles? Is a facilities team going to be hopping in on this? We need to figure out who our team is. Lastly, once you get your team figured out, start moving forward with your EEMs. So real simple card, take some, share them with your clients to help them get that first step through, because benchmarking is required. They need to set up that Energy Star account and start recording their information so they're not caught behind the 8 ball. Okay, questions? Yeah. So if the energy provider typically holds about 12 months of records, sometimes they have more. If not, then starting now, that way they have 12 months by the time they start figuring out where they're at with their energy use. That's going to be a calculation that you have to create via the city's website. And then there's a little formula that you use to calculate that out. It's based on, I'm trying to think. They look at what your network grid, so whatever your energy provider is providing to your building. So the whole goal here in the city of Seattle is basically getting rid of natural gas, getting rid of heating oil, getting rid of all the fossil fuels that are being used within buildings. That's the long-term goal here. So, and then changing the city light into more renewable sources, changing Seattle steam over into more renewable sources. That's what they're doing within the city. So if you are still using gas in your buildings here in the city of Seattle, start implementing plans to change that to electric. Yeah, depending, once you figure out your saw count, you get your benchmarking done, then the consultant will be able to figure out what the weather normalized EUI is for the building. And then they can figure out, based on the footprint of the building, how many gross square feet are being used for the different things. They have the energy use target that's used for that, and then they can calculate that out. Once you have that energy use target, then you can figure out what you need to do.
The folks online were asking to hear the questions.
Oh, yeah. So, so you do the benchmarking first to collect the data, and
Yep.
you've got to do that for 12 months?
12 months minimum.
Okay, and then once you have that, then you hire an energy auditor to calculate the EUI based on the benchmark data and the building square footage and geometry and stuff.
Yeah, either an auditor or a consultant, an energy qualified person.
Okay,
So that can do that role.
yeah, and so I guess my question is, who are those people?
So going back to that slide, let me go back a little bit here. And there you go. So there's very specific qualifications that they need to meet, certifications.
Okay.
So if they have those certifications, then they can do that work.
Okay, so I'm seeing for energy auditor, a licensed professional engineer, architect, or like this ASHRAE certified person.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, like, yeah, is that mechanical engineers? Is that, I mean, I guess maybe RDH is doing that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and that it all depends on, who's on the team. So who's going to be the energy manager is kind of like the key person. They're the person that's going to determine who's going to do what. So if the energy manager is going to be a consultant, then the consultant would be doing that calculation for them up front. If they're going to be hiring an auditor and a qualified person separate from the energy manager, then they have to start figuring out who's going to be doing what.
Okay, so that's what you said. Sometimes the energy manager can serve all three roles.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Or a building owner, if they have one of these qualifications, can do all of them.
I see. Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? It's a huge, huge amount of information. Tried to cram in here. Feel free to call. You can call, you send an email to the Department of Commerce. Check out their website. There's a lot of information. It's a great resource. They have webinars that are going on a regular basis. Energy Star does some great webinars as well. They have some stuff on YouTube to help walk you through this. The building performance standard is a nationwide thing. How they implement it is going to be determined by the individual municipality or state. So City of Seattle, they're going with the greenhouse method. The state's going as an energy thing. If we go over to Colorado, we look at Colorado, Denver, they're going at it from an energy effect, but they're already going down to 50 or 5,000 gross square feet buildings. So pretty significant. So New York City, they're approaching it in a different way. If you have to actually post on your building what your energy use target is and how you're doing. And that has to be released to the public when they do a public purchase. So how's that going to affect building owners and research studies? I want to move into a condo. I can ask the condo, where are you with your EUI? How are you doing? If they're doing horrible, I don't want to move in there because I'm going to get hit with an assessment or something. There's going to be some big impacts.
Lee Laney asked, can't the benchmark data come from the past usage provided the utility provider rather than being collected by the owner over a 12-month period?
Yeah, so the building owner can take past bills if they still have their old bills, and they can upload there. There's a special kind of Excel sheet that you can populate and then upload that, and they'll populate onto Energy Star. So you don't have to totally rely on an energy provider, but most of the energy providers here locally have been reporting for a while. Yeah. Any other questions online?
I don't see any in the chat. Folks could probably unmute themselves if they wanted to speak up, but nothing currently.
Okay, great.
So,
Well, again, thank you for letting me give you a heads up of what's coming down the pipe. We got a lot of stuff that we need to, oh, I see somebody got one there.
so Lee says, I assume savings estimates for EEM generally come from modeling software. Are there certain approved softwares?
I didn't catch that.
So he says I assume savings estimates for EEM generally come from modeling software. And are there certain approved softwares?
Yeah, so the Department of Commerce has their own life cycle analysis tool that they're using. It's not their personal one, they are using a federal one. So it's very specific. So you got to go to the website, check out what that is. I don't know it offhand. I'm sorry, but I can get back to you. But it is on their website with which one you need to follow. Great.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I will ask one question about the impacts of not meeting. You said there's some penalties to the
Yes.
owners. Can you talk a little bit more about those?
Okay. So like I mentioned, if I have a 200,000 or 220,000 gross square foot building, if I choose not to do anything, I'll get a warning. If I still don't respond to that warning, they're going to send me a $5,000 fine through a tax collector. Then you still don't respond, you'll hit with another $5,000. If you still don't respond, then they start retroacting the $1 per gross square foot up to 18 months. So it's a huge amount of money that's going to per day. Yeah, a very significant amount of money. So it's basically really telling the homeowners or building owners they really need to make some changes. And some, the long-term effect here, we're going to see these folks that have been sitting and it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. They're going to get to 2025 and then realize that they're behind the 8 ball. You're going to see a whole slew of buildings hit the for sale signs on it. They're going to be hitting the market. So something to be aware of. Want to cash in on a large building, needs some improvements.
Follow-up question to that. If the building owner is making steps but not quite meeting the criteria, is there a grace period of something with those fines?
Yeah, so that was that performance thing. So, our building's up here and we need to get down here by 2045. We need to create that energy plan. And an energy plan is basically taking your reserve study that's on steroids and plotting each of those different components along there where their life cycle ends. Some of those components might need to get pushed forward in order to meet the compliance for that next cycle that's coming. So that slide that I showed, that optimized bundle, I'm going to change out windows. I'm going to put a new VRF system upstairs, put some solar panels up there to help run that. That's the kind of stuff that you'll be plotting on there, and then you might have to move forward if needed. So as long as you have a plan and you submit that, there'll be a small penalty, but it's not going to be anything significant.
Sounds good. So we will have this presentation recorded and posted to our YouTube channel, but we had a request for a PDF of your postcard.
Yes, I can get that too.
Okay, and we'll just send it out to the attendees.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
All right, thanks again, Michael. Thanks to everybody who's here in person. Thanks to the folks who attended online. And we hope to see you next month at our holiday party. And we'll let you know when we figure out where our holiday party is. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.